Alright guys, welcome back. GM Light here. Today we're going to be talking about Saw 2. And man, I fucking love this movie. So I've mentioned this before, but I'm a huge fan of this franchise, and Saw 2 is definitely one of my favorite sequels in this franchise. I love this movie, and I actually think that it's an improvement. It builds off of everything great about that first movie and takes it to the next level. If you don't know what Saw 2 is about, it's about when a detective and his team must rescue 8 people trapped in a factory by the twisted serial killer known as Jigsaw. And right out the gate, this movie just has a cringy, crazy, badass trap. It's just one of the movies where it provides the exact Saw experience that I want when I go back, pick a movie off the shelf. Exactly what I want. This movie provides everything for that. It's just the package that I think of when I want a Saw movie. It's bigger, it's got a more clever setup in my opinion than the first movie does, and it's also one that really unravels Jigsaw's psychology. You actually get to spend the entirety of the movie with Jigsaw. I think that this is the only movie where you really do get to spend a movie in real time with Jigsaw, where he's not on his deathbed, and you get that quality time where Detective Matthews is picking his brain. He's trying to make him crack, he's trying to get into his head, meanwhile Jigsaw's working him back and kind of getting back into his head. It's all very interesting stuff, and this is where we get a lot of those classic hallmarks of the franchise, the stuff that moving forward is what I always come back for. And it just especially too, this movie is kind of what I mentioned before, but you dig a lot more into the psychology of Jigsaw. You learn a lot more about him, his background, where he came from, why he does what he does, why he kind of, in his twisted serial killer way, cherishes life. And it also kind of contrasts and thematically ties to the main trap with this deadly nerve agent that's slowly killing you. And speaking of the main trap, you have this main trap that creates a greater sense of urgency, I think, than that first movie. With that one, you kind of have that looming sense of, you know, Gordon's family's out there somewhere, but in this one, they're all dying, they're desperate for that antidote. It kind of creates that situation where there's a lot of drama between everybody in there. You also have that factor of Detective Matthews' son is in there with all of the people he put away and he doesn't know about it, and none of them know about it. And all of that creates a good medium between that cleverness that they kind of have in that original movie and then some of those aspects that I really dig about the later movies, the stuff where there's more Jigsaw-based things. You have those traps and the more kind of, you know, gore-centric parts of it, and it all just adds up to this package of a Saw movie that I really dig. You get it all in a pretty tightly wound, cleverly written 90-minute movie, which I love when a movie just keeps to 90 minutes. Saw 1 isn't particularly long. It's only an hour 45 minutes long, but this movie just really gets into it. It sets up its characters pretty quickly, gives you that really insanely great trap right out the gate with that Venus flytrap thing. Gnarly stuff. Some of the, you know, one of the franchise best traps. Then it creates a situation where it reminds me very much of when Batman catches the Joker in The Dark Knight. Detective Matthews has Jigsaw, but he has this entire thing laid out in his head. He has it all worked out. He pretty much thought of everything. He has the lesson in mind. And there's also the way that the movie likes to play with the timelines. You're not really aware of it throughout the movie, but the movie is playing with the timelines. You don't know exactly when things are happening concurrently. You don't know when scenes take place in relation to each other, and then when it reveals everything, it really kind of blows your mind. Although it's another movie, like I said with the first movie, where it's hard for the mystery of that to really kind of get one over on me, it still just works really good, and it's, you know, I love getting to that reveal. It paces at just the right tempo to build that tension, and then at the right possible moment releases all that tension. Jigsaw, I also would argue, is probably at his most interesting here. As I said, this is really the only time that you kind of get to sit down with him in real time. Characters are kind of exchanging ideas with him, trying to interrogate him, because this is the only time that he really is in custody at all in the series. So the fact that, you know, they're having this exchange, you can see that Jigsaw is kind of working him when he thinks that he's working Jigsaw. There's that desperation at hand. Jigsaw knows all the right buttons to push on Detective Matthews to get him upset and get him all riled up. And it's the stuff like that that just makes this character so interesting. He's never at a loss for words. He's never at a loss for a plan. He has a contingency for everything. That's just very Jigsaw. And this is really the movie where they kind of establish that and more of his personality. You don't get a whole lot of his personality really at all in the first movie. He's kind of more of a reveal at the end. They keep him in the shadows. You get some voice work and some stuff like that from Jigsaw in the first movie, but besides that, the only scenes where you really see Tobin Bell as Jigsaw is when he's lying in a bed in the hospital. Then that insanely awesome scene at the end of the first movie where he pulls the cap back and reveals that he was alive the whole time. So Jigsaw's firing on all cylinders in this movie, and the elaborate trap that he created with these convicts is honestly terrifying. They're all very cringy. They deal with things like fire, needles, things where your hands get trapped, just cutting. Every way where these things just, they get under your skin in the worst possible ways. You wouldn't ever want to possibly deal with something like this. And then when it all works down on just such a strict time clock on a budget, you feel that desperation, you feel that urgency, and it brings out the true colors of all those characters in there. And then in some, you know, of course it brings out the compassion, and then with characters like the big guy, it brings out the absolute worst and the scummiest of him. Another thing too is, I think that this is the movie where Amanda really cements herself as an iconic staple of this franchise. Think about with Saw X. The big ending money shot of the trailer was her taking off the pig mask, big reveal, Amanda's back. I think this is the movie that cemented her as a huge player in this franchise. You get a very different side to her. You get the feigning side to her where she wakes up and you think that she's just wound back up in this trap again. She just has to survive Jigsaw all over again. So she gets to play that been there, done that routine, but then also a little bit at the end, she gets to play that Jigsaw apprentice kind of role. So she gets a little bit of two different bits to chew on throughout this movie, and you definitely buy both of them. With knowing what got her into the Saw trap in the first place in the first movie, how she was after that, where she is in this movie, you just buy the whole thing. It never seemed too far-fetched, you never don't believe it, and it also doesn't make you hate her character. It makes you even more intrigued by what they will do with her in Saw 3. It's not a situation where she's just too stable to where you would never buy it. She's obviously had that little bit of mania to her from the beginning. The first Saw movie, she claimed afterwards that he helped her, so it only makes sense that she would kind of go down this path that she does go down in this movie. And it also adds a very, honestly, surprising extra twist. Not that they didn't have enough already in the movie. Every thread ties together perfectly by the end. It all works. I don't think that any one of these twists really flop or fall or fail. They come together in a way that's definitely believable. It makes a lot more sense the fact that Jigsaw can't do this alone. Amanda being his apprentice makes it even more interesting, especially too because she's someone who survived his trap. And then it leads you to think about what the possibilities are, what else is going on here. It leaves you in a state where you have a lot of questions answered, but then it also gives you so many more questions and it just leaves you wanting more. And that's why I think that Saw 2 is one of the best sequels of all time, one of the best horror sequels of all time. I love this movie. I love rewatching it and revisiting it. It's one of my favorites. Let me know what you guys think of Saw 2 in the comments. I'd love to hear. Is it your favorite? Is it your least favorite? Let me know. I'm GM Light. Have a good one.